Hey Postables, you're listening to Deliver Me a Podcast brought to you by Kaycee, Jess, and Cammie. A special thanks to James Jandrisch for letting us use the music on our show. Now, grab some yoo-hoo, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome back, Postables, to a very exciting interview. We have here Joanna Davidson Politano joining us because her book, this one right here, The Love Note, releases today. Super exciting. Woo! So congrats on launch day, Joanna, and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be with you guys.
Yeah,
tell us about the Facebook event happening tonight.
Yes, so we have Love Letters and Literature happening tonight. I'm really excited. It's going to be a bunch of authors who have letters in their books, and we're going to be featuring some podcast visitors and having some letter reading and stuff like that, a lot of giveaways. So that is on a Facebook event page at, I think, 6 o'clock Central Time.
Awesome. I wonder what guests you might be there. I don't know.
I happen to be a guest reader tonight, so you get to hear me twice.
Yay! And are there going to be any giveaways or any fun swag that'll be happening?
Oh, yes. There are going to be, I believe, some book giveaways and some signed, sealed, and delivered giveaways. I think we have a DVD or something like that. So, yeah, definitely worth checking into.
Nice.
Super fun. Postables, come find us tonight. I'll probably pop in. You can hear Cammie and her wonderful theatrical presentation of this letter. I don't really even know what it's about, but I'm here for it.
It's the letter from Persuasion.
Ooh,
one of the best letters in literature there is. That's amazing.
That's quite the letter. Oof.
Super fun.
I've been reading through it to practice, and yikes. Whoa. If a man were to write me that kind of letter, I'd be gone in 10 seconds flat.
Mr. Hooked Hardy, do you hear that?
Yeah. Mr. Cammie.
Oh man, to get Mr. Cammie to write this kind of a letter, yeah, I don't think it's in his blood.
So, Joanna, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started into writing?
Sure. I started out as a medical writer in the pharmaceutical field many years ago. I was there for about 8 years. I learned a whole lot about pharmaceuticals and the way they're run, and it's very interesting. And then after being there several years, I started needing a creative outlet. And I started writing the story of my great-grandparents. And it just kind of flowed out scene after scene after scene like a novel. And I was so hooked on writing stories. I just love stories.
That is super fun. And your grandparents too. I mean, was it hard trying to gather that? Because sometimes writing something very personal can be a little difficult, but, or did you embellish it or anything, or?
Well, I took stories that my grandma told me. These were her parents, and when they came over to the United States from Norway, and there were a bunch of family secrets that were so surprising to me. And so I just started collecting all this information from our conversations. And, you know, she was sick, so she was on the couch, and pretty much what we did was just talk all the time. And this story just evolved, and it was amazing. So I tracked down the truth of the story, because there were several versions in my family, through birth and death certificates and things like that. It was really interesting.
Family folklore.
Yeah. So then I started writing out my great-grandfather's story, and there were like threads of it that were so, that I identified with so much, and it was like almost therapeutic to write it. It was so much fun. He was actually a pianist in the silent movie theaters when he was a young teenager, because he was kicked out of his house very young. And so he had a whole fascinating life and was just one of the most unusually humble and sweet people despite all of it. So it was really fun to write his story.
Yeah, that's so awesome that you got to kind of learn all that and then write about it.
It was wonderful.
So besides your newest book, you've written a couple others as well, like Lady Jane Disappears, Finding Lady Enderley, and it seems like most of those are set in Victorian England. Is there like a reason you have this preference or a connection that you have to this time period that you like to write about it?
Not so much of a connection, but I've read a lot of literature that was written in that time period. I love Dickens. Charles Dickens is one of my favorites. So I just felt very at home writing in that era. And I don't know, once I submitted Lady Jane to a publisher, it was the first Victorian novel that I wrote, and they decided to brand me Victorian England. I stuck with it.
That makes it easy.
It does.
So out of all the books that you've released, do you have a favorite one or one that was the most meaningful to you?
Absolutely. Well, the first one was meaningful just because it was my first published book. It was
Obviously, yeah.
Kind of an attainment of a dream. And it was fun to write because I didn't have any deadlines or pressure, and I didn't plan on showing it to anybody. So that was really easy. But out of all, I've now written 5 books. And I think the second one was the most difficult to write. I had a baby the same week my contract came in, the same week I found out my book topic. And of course, when you have a newborn, you don't sleep, right? So it was very difficult. I had to write that book in 10 months. And for most of the book, I was just like, I can't do this. I can't do this. This is terrible. This is terrible. But what was awesome about writing that book was, first of all, it totally undercut my self-reliance.
Mm-hmm.
It forced me in the last 6 weeks of writing that book to figure out how to rely on God and to write not just books that were like for him and for a ministry purpose, but like with him, with his help, and with his ideas and things like that, and just being very submitted to him. And aside from that, the romance thread in that book is based loosely on my husband and I's romance. He's very Italian and I'm very quiet Norwegian. We're very different. And when I first met him, I did not like him. So it has threads of our love story in there, and kind of how he changed my mind, how God changed my mind, and how he ended up being just the perfect person for me. So that book will always hold a special place in my heart. The love note was not equally, almost as difficult to write. God completely rewrote the ending. He completely changed what direction I had been going and nudged me a different direction. And so that one also became a favorite. And it was something that, like, the ending was something I needed to hear personally. So he wrote it to me.
Oh, that's so interesting, because I mean, when I was reading the love note, no spoilers, I was completely like, what just happened here?
Oh man,
So, wow.
The person who ended up writing the note was not the person that I saw writing the note when I was reading it.
Yeah.
No way.
I had a totally different person in mind at the beginning. I had a totally different purpose for the letter. Everything about it changed because I don't know, I was about 70% of the way through and I realized the story was all wrong.
Yeah. So,
So,
I guessed the writer pretty early on, but I was floored by the recipient of the letter who was intended to be
that
written.
Mhm.
That
Yes.
surprised
All
me
right.
for sure.
At least I could surprise you on one layer.
And she does not surprise easily, so well done.
Good.
You surprised Jess.
Oh, fun. Do you have a book that was the most fun to write? I mean, we kind of touched about your favorites and, all of that, but was it the one with your husband because of that relationship?
That one was painful to write.
Oh.
But not because of it being about my husband, just because I was writing in little snatches of 10 and 20 minutes and feeling completely inadequate for most of the book. And it wasn't working out very well. And I was struggling to get it down on paper. But the research I did into the vineyards and the spiritual depth that I mined from that I will never forget that experience, and the experience of coming alongside God to write. That was just incredible. So that was probably, I also enjoyed writing the love story and Finding Lady Enderley. It has a very literary bent, and it was unusual, and it was just fun. It was a lot of fun to write.
Awesome. Do you have anything you're working on now, or any upcoming books that you would like to tease or briefly talk about?
Oh, sure. I just turned in a book to my publisher that is set in the Victorian theater.
Ooh.
You're speaking my language.
It is about the ballet, and it was difficult for me to write because I'm not so coordinated. I'm not a ballet person, but my daughter is in love with the ballet. She's thick. She dances and twirls in little circles all the time, and she started taking ballet lessons. So I started taking her to live ballets when I started writing this book. And I have to admit, the first time I walked into Sleeping Beauty I took her to, I was floored. It was like the color and the artistry, it was gorgeous. And my little 4-year-old was so hooked to that ballet. And so the book that resulted from all this research and all these live ballets was full of color and life. And it was so much fun to put down on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so fun.
That one comes out in a year. I just turned that one in. And then after that, I'm setting a book in a totally different setting. This is the Victorian Asylum.
Ooh,
and
this is up my alley.
It's slightly darker than my other books, but it's still not, it's not a horror. It's not anything violent or anything like that. But it has to do, she's a concert pianist, the main character. So it has to do a little bit with the very beginning research of music therapy.
Oh.
So there's a lot of light interspersed in the darkness.
That is super fascinating. Huh.
Yeah, it's intimidating too. We'll see how it turns out.
I can imagine that would be intimidating, but I mean, what a topic to touch on. Because I'm a musician. I fully believe in the power of music. And there's nothing so healing as belting out Broadway.
So true. I'm gonna have a character who just belts out a song.
There
awesome. I think that's a great idea.
Oh, thank you. Feel free to use my maiden name for the character because it's English. So
wonderful.
So as you're writing and you're researching and doing all this work for your books, especially in these time periods that they're in, what are you a pantser or are you a plotter?
Very much a pantser. I have to write by the seat of my pants. I tried so hard to be a plotter with the current book, The Love Note. I spent months fleshing out the most detailed outline with character sketches and, bridges between all the chapters, figuring out how to get from point A to point B. And I was so excited about it. And then I started to put it down on paper and I was just like, this is flat. This is awful. And there were so many holes and it wasn't working and it was cheesy. Oh, it was terrible. So I threw out the whole outline I did. I took the first chapter that I wrote and then everything else after that I was like, nope, it's gone. I have to be able to write where I don't know what's going to happen because it somehow allows for the characters to I get to know them and then they take over the story. It allows for a lot more dependence on God and just conversations throughout. Instead of depending on my own strength of my outline and plotting methods. It's just like an adventure where you can't see further than the next step, and it's so much more.
Yeah, I don't think I've had a single author here or on the Hallmarkies podcast who's been a true plotter. I think everyone's pretty much a pantser, and I think because kind of like you're alluding to, you can plot as much as you want, but then something's not going to work, or maybe it doesn't line up with the character, and you just have to be able to switch gears, and then your whole plot's just gone.
Yeah, and it's people say, I've talked to a lot of plotters who say you can tweak and stuff like that as you go. You can't. You get one character that you didn't understand right, like when you see them actually talking and living, it's just different, and then they take the story and turn it completely 90 degrees a different angle, and it's a total loss.
Yeah, I feel like that's maybe that's my problem, because I've always wanted to write a book, and our mutual friend Rachel Fordham is like, Kaycee, Jess, and Cammie, your assignment is to write a novel, and we're like, okay, yeah. And I'm like, I've always been this way. Even in college, when I took creative writing and advanced creative writing and all this stuff, I would plot everything, and then I get to the paper, and I'm like, gotta stick to the plan, and then I'm like, dead. I can't figure out what I'm writing. I can't figure out the characters. I can't even figure out where I'm going. And I'm like, because I'm so planner driven too. Like, I'm a planner. I live by my planner. Like, it's just a thing. So I feel like maybe if I just like rip that off. No, but that's what I'm saying. Maybe I just need to like throw that away and just like be a pantser. Like,
be a pantser, Kaycee. Join the club.
Join the pantser club.
Oh, honestly, I will say this. I'm a total planner. Like, my planner is always open on my kitchen table. I live by it. I depend on it. But like, when it comes to writing, I think God likes to kind of shake it up a little bit and say, no, we're going to do something out of your comfort zone. And that's where the best writing comes from, is out of your comfort zone. So it's worth a shot. But I do plan a little bit. When I get stuck, I'm like, okay, let's think about what's going to happen in the next like 3 scenes. And I plot that. But that's as far as I go. But that does help.
Well, you know the old saying, if you want to make God laugh, make plans.
So true.
Very true. Very true. So, Joanna, I have another question about writing. I've noticed that you write in first person, at least the ones that I've read, I've started to read. And what has brought you to write in first person? Because a lot of it is like third person omniscient or whatever.
Yeah. So when I wrote my first novel, not knowing how to write a novel, it came out in first person. It helped me feel more closely connected to the character, who was my great grandfather. And it just kind of flowed out that way. I experimented going back and forth between first and third. I originally wrote Lady Jane in third person. And one of my good writing friends, Dawn Crandall, who writes in first person as well, was just like, think how much more interesting this would be if it was in first person. I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And it was so much more natural. So I think everybody has a natural writing voice, and that includes point of view. There are a lot of people who are turned off by first person point of view, and that's fine, because there are a lot more people who would probably not like my book if it didn't sound organically, naturally like my voice, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If first person is what's most natural for me, that's going to create the best story.
Right. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And that was one thing that I had to remember to wrap my head around, because I remember reading this and I was like, oh, we're in first person, and I haven't read a story in first person in like years, like a really long time, especially when that was fiction, but I think you do it so beautifully. And I feel like because it was in first person, I was able to like dive into the shoes of the characters even more, and just like kind of embody them differently than how I would read a book that was written in third. So kudos.
Yeah, it makes it easier for me as the writer too, because I'm not writing at a distance about these people that I'm looking at. I'm like walking through the story with them. And it's a totally different writing experience. So I enjoy that. I enjoy first person.
Yeah. Fun. All righty. Let's segue into your book that is now, you can buy the Love Note anywhere that you can find books, anywhere where books are sold. So be sure to check it out. The Love Note. Woo! Woo!
We won't give anything away.
Yes, hashtag no spoilers.
So what inspired you to write this book about a mysterious love note? Because that's the whole thing driving. I almost imagined if it were in a movie sense, I almost imagined the camera following the paper.
Yes.
So it was almost from the paper's point of view. So.
It was. The storyline definitely followed that piece of paper around. So it kind of came as a last minute inspiration. My publisher had asked me for 3 new story ideas for my new contract. And they rejected one of my story ideas and said, send us another one. And I think they said like by tomorrow or something. And I was like, but I don't have any other stories.
Whoa.
So I actually looked at Rachel Fordham's book that was, I think, close to releasing or just released. Yours truly, Thomas, and it was
Yeah.
about a lost love letter. And I was just like, I love that concept. I love it. I think it would be really fabulous. And I had been thinking a lot about my grandparents and their romance that took place during World War II. Most of their dating relationship was through letters. They met a handful of times
Oh.
before they got married, but most of it, and my grandma was writing to several different soldiers at the time, but she and my grandpa used to write back and forth, and he would send her little drawings and cartoons. He's an artist. And so the majority of them getting to know each other was what they chose to tell each other in letters. And I just thought, man, how easy would it be to read something into a letter or misconstrue it? And so that kind of led me to be like, okay, what if other people pick up this love letter and read into it what they think it is, and that they think it's for them from some secret admirer? And so it kind of evolved from there. And then when I kept hitting brick walls when I was writing this story. And one of my very good local writing friends, or well, she's a reader actually, one of my very good local friends says, hey, watch Signed, Sealed, and Delivered if you want some inspiration. And I was like, what, Signed, Sealed, and Delivered? She's like, here you go. Here's some episodes for you. And I watched I didn't know that there was an order to it. So I watched, I don't remember which one I started with, and I was floored. I was just like, give me more of that, please. That was wonderful. It was amazing and brilliant the way they had a lot of truth very subtly woven into the storyline. It was never preachy. It was never corny. A lot of times it was unexpected, the way the storyline went. And like I told Rachel, I could watch it with my kids in the room and feel totally comfortable. So I ended up getting all the movies and all the shows and kind of binge watching over the period of a few weeks while I started writing this book. And it just, I didn't directly take any storylines from the show, of course, but it was more just the desire to connect these people with their lost letters, and most of these letters in the show are like a linchpin, like a huge, huge deal to their story, their lives. And so that really inspired me while I was writing my story. And it made the letter a much bigger deal in my book than I had ever thought it would be.
And Postables, if you buy this book and read it, make sure to check out the dedication because it is dedicated to the Postables.
It is dedicated to the Postables.
Touch.
Yeah, see, that's the part that came next. After I watched the show, I discovered this amazing group of people who also love the show. And I really enjoyed watching them react to the marathons and stuff like that, and just support each other and talk to each other. I could not believe that all these strangers were becoming friends and really watching out for each other online. I thought that was just the coolest. And there were 3 of them who actually became very good friends of mine, and they helped me with my books, to planning and things like that, and they're just wonderful people.
Well, I have to tell you something that particularly struck me about the book, because when you said that when you first met your husband, you didn't even like him, and so you wrote a story basically about your romance. That's my husband and me.
That's really funny.
It is. When my husband and I met, I was waiting for another guy to come home from his mission service. He was on a mission for our church, and he was gone for 2 years. And I met him after I met Will after this other guy had been gone for 1 year, and Will just snuck his way in. But at first I did not like him, and then he became my friend, and then he made himself completely valuable to me, so that I couldn't do without him anymore. And it was just so beautiful. And there was a quote in your book that I particularly want to say, and it doesn't give anything away, Postables. It doesn't spoil anything, but there's another letter. This is not part of the love note, but it's another letter that the main character receives by a very famous poet, and I won't say any more about that. but this just spoke to me, and this is when I started crying. And that happens in books for me, but it happens more in movies because I'm more of a visual person. Even though I'm authoring a novel myself, I see it in my head and I write down what I see. And so for me to be touched by something in a book so deeply, it's got to be very close to home or very well written or both. And so I had to read this part. Don't concern yourself so much with the great search for passion and sparks. Those can be cultivated as well as found, often with greater reward. We are both like flags, you and I, erratic and passionate, colors on display, blowing wherever the wind takes us. Do not be afraid to marry a man who's firmly planted to earth, for he is the flagpole to your flag, not restricting, but anchoring, so that you may be free to fly. In return, you shall decorate the dull gray metal of his life forevermore. That was so beautiful to me because my husband is the sturdy one, the solid one, the one who kind of calms me down. And I'm the one who's more passionate, very artistic, and just out there. And he supports every one of the dreams that I spout off. And even when he doesn't agree with them necessarily, he just says, okay, let's figure out a way to make it work. And it's just
beautiful.
It is, and it is such a beautiful picture and such a beautiful image, and it's something that I have never ever considered before, and that was such an amazing piece of writing. So thank you so much for giving me a new sense of imagery, because that was just so gorgeous.
Thank you. That's something that has evolved in my thinking through my marriage. I mean, it's due to my husband that I even got published, because he is the one who grounded me and got the legwork of the writing. And he's like, okay, you got to do this, and then you got to do it. And, you know, me being my passionate, kind of erratic self, I'd be like, oh, I'll write 3 chapters in this story. Then I feel like writing a chapter in this story, and I'm never going to send it anywhere. And he's like, nope, you're going to send a story in because you're going to get published. And I'm like, but I'm nervous. And he's like, you're going to do it. So he's been the flagpole to my crazy flag. And he's very practical, very steady, very, very dedicated to his family. And he kind of makes it possible for me to sneak away and write. He encourages me when I get discouraged and things like that. And I bring a little bit of excitement and goofiness to his world.
Oh.
Were we twins in another life? I mean, my gosh. Probably.
Because you like to write, yes?
I do, yeah. I have a different style, like I said. I watch the movie in my head and I write down what I see. That's how my inspiration comes. But yeah.
That's very cool.
It is very cool, and it's not something I cultivated. It's something that just kind of came to me. So.
Very cool. I want to hear more about that sometime.
I would be glad to tell you. But we'll spare the other 2 from boredom.
All righty, you guys. It is now time for the next segment. The segment that we are all here. Why this podcast even exists. Signed, sealed, delivered! Yay!
So, Joanna, you've told us a bit about how you discovered SSD. So, do you have a favorite episode or movie out of the series?
My number 1 favorite is Higher Ground. I cried several times through that movie.
It's a good one.
The music in it also kind of got to me. Just the way they played with their heart and soul. It just threaded right through the story beautifully, and I loved it. It's going to be hard for them to ever top that one, honestly. That was really good. The other one I would say is, I think it's called Lost Without You.
Yep.
Where they go camping, Oliver and his father.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, that one was also terrific. It was just every little scene built up and built up until it was just the perfect ending, and I loved it.
Oh,
It was amazing.
that ending is my favorite.
It was
Yeah.
beautiful, wasn't
My
it?
favorite. Like,
Those
here's the
chapel
bucket.
scenes.
Here are my tears. Here's the bucket. Here are my tears.
Just
Oh,
go
yeah.
listen to our coverage of Lost Without You, and you'll hear just how much Kaycee gushed about it.
Oh yeah, you'll probably even see tears coming to my eyes because it's just so beautiful.
It is.
So
Brilliantly
beautiful.
written.
Oh, so good.
Mhm.
So good. I mean, I feel like it's probably definitely my top favorite like moment. Just because there's so much in that scene. I mean, with the spiritual aspect and with them finally really coming together, like finally, and like,
After how long?
Oh, yes.
yes. I mean,
Forever.
depending on if you binged it or if you watched it live, I mean, you know.
Yeah, it was only a few weeks for me.
Yeah.
Lucky
48
you.
hours.
Oh, so fun.
What are you talking about, ladies? They came together after 8 hours.
It's all good.
Which character in SSD do you most identify with?
Oh, probably a few of them. I think Oliver's kind of quiet, his nature, and then a little bit of Norman sort of behind the scenes thinking things through. But I think more Rita than anything, sort of the quirky, fixates on things like owls and gets excited, and just an upbeat, happy individual, like that kind of personality. I identify with that a lot. I really enjoyed watching her. She was just so sweet. And even as like a kind of a homecoming queen when she was in those episodes, she was just a doll. She was such a sweetheart. And so I don't know, watching her quirkiness and her personality and just the way she kind of fell in love, it really resonated with me.
Do you have a dance to go with her?
And her character grows so much through the entire canon of Signed Sealed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing to watch her be like this really shy, awkward girl, and then she blossoms in so many different ways, but still keeps her true self, and she still keeps like that fun and that goofy side,
Yeah,
So,
it's just like she
love
opens
that.
up and becomes more her true self. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So if you could write an episode or a movie for SSD, what would the premise be?
Oh my goodness. That's a good question. I don't know. I love writing stories where people have to figure out what happened like a generation ago, like a long time, and how it impacts the modern, how it impacts them today. And, finding out what happened to your father, or why this thing happened to an aunt and uncle, or why these people are the way they are. And I feel like Signed, Sealed, and Delivered does that. Not that far back, but they find letters from the past and they always affect the future. And I love that. I'm not even sure what I would use for a premise. I'd have to think about that a little bit. But some kind of family history for sure. That's my favorite. And some kind of like really cool big old house and that's ruined or something like that.
Maybe Oliver could find a letter from his like great grandfather O'Toole.
That would be fun. And he was on the Pony Express.
There you go.
Oh, super fun. Do you have any ideas what they would do for the next movie? I know like we've kind of thought different things. Are you a fan of, yes, let's have a actual wedding movie, or are you more of a let's wait, or more of a wedding in retrospective?
I love weddings. I want to see the dress. I want to see all the people. I want to see the vows.
That a girl!
Tears and all the stuff. I will cry through the wedding because I cry through the happy parts. But I think I would also like to see their marriage, because we saw so much of their relationship building up. We saw them struggle to get around what was hindering them for so long. I just want to see them together, happy and learning to just be together. I don't know. I love watching them on screen together. So
So many people feel that the romance ends when the marriage happens.
Mhm.
And, you
Oh,
know,
that's-
they got married, the show's over.
No, that's when the adventure starts. Are you kidding me? That's the best part.
I
That's
know.
when I wanna see the marriage,
Kaycee,
too.
apparently our lives have been over for a while now.
Yeah. Mine's been over for 8.5 years. Poor
Beg
me.
to differ.
I'm 8.5 as well. Yeah, I don't feel like we're anywhere near gone yet.
Oh, yeah, no. Every day feels like a new adventure, especially when there are kids involved and a
Oh,
bunch
yeah.
of shenanigans. I mean,
Oh yes, always unexpected things coming. Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
end.
yeah, like my daughter had community day, community service helper day. Yes. And she was like, I'm going to be a teacher. So put her in her little outfit. And then she just starts like talking all posh and everything. Mommy, I need my cereal. like, where's this accent coming from?
All teachers are now British.
Answer with an Australian accent or something.
Just ridiculousness like that. It's just so fun. But yeah, I agree with you. I want to see a marriage. I want to see them struggle with like their normal married selves doing like married things, you know? Like
I feel
Watch
like
Oliver get upset when she leaves the toothpaste cap on.
Especially because they're
many
so
people could
opposite.
identify with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and learning to live together too. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
that's
I
the thing.
dated my husband for 5 years and I still had to figure out how to mesh our lives because we didn't live together and we were long distance actually. So
Oh.
that meshing is still going on sometimes.
My word.
Wow, 5 years.
I
can't imagine.
I was a hard sell.
Man, I thought I was a hard sell.
Yeah, he told me, I think 2 weeks in, well, you're the girl I'm going to marry unless you decide you don't want to. So just let me know when you're ready. And he never mentioned it again. So I just took some time. I just, I wasn't in a rush. And then I think I was about 29 and I was like, okay, I think I'm ready now. And he goes, okay, great. And didn't say anything again for a little while. And apparently he had to go ask my dad and get the ring. And then he proposed.
Wow.
So it took a little while, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad we're here.
See, they could do so much. I mean, like, look at the three of us. We're all like in our, again, shenanigans, the shenanigans of life and marriage and children and
Man.
moving
Oh,
and
so much fun.
just life. Alrighty. So we're going to segue into our last segment here, which is, well, we like to call it Teen Beat because we really have no other better way to call it what it is. But we're going to do the author version. And it's going to be just like author writing book fun questions. So Jess, take it away.
All right. So first question, what are you reading right now?
I'm reading a whole lot of books. I'm reading a book for endorsement coming out by Amanda Wen. I'm reading a book for endorsement by Michelle Greep, which is The Thief of Blackfriar Lane. Very, very good. Both of them are very, very good. I'm reading an Isaiah story by Misu Andrews, which is, of course, phenomenal. She's a great writer. I'm reading Stay With Me by Becky Wade. That's all that comes to mind at the moment. I think there's a few others. Oh, I just finished The Bright Unknown by Elizabeth Baylor Younts, and it was fantastic.
Oh. So, fiction or nonfiction? Because you've had ample amounts of both in your life.
Mm-hmm.
All of the above. I like it all. I love a good story, though. There's nothing like it, but I'm also a pretty big fall down a history rabbit trail. So I have a huge stack of ballet history books, and I just read right through them and adored them. So I'll take anything between, 2 book covers.
Wow.
Library or bookstore?
Both. I don't know. Library probably, because you have a lot more of the older title. Bookstores tend to carry the most recent title, and they have probably fewer options. The libraries, depending on the size, can have a whole lot of choices. And
Mhm.
you get stuck on an author, you can check out a bunch of books by that author. So I like that.
And it's free.
Yeah, true.
Exactly.
All right. Physical book or e-reader?
Physical book. I love my physical books. I love to hold it in my hands. But I do like the e-readers when I'm on the go. You know, I'm waiting for a doctor's appointment or something like that. I love to be able, so I always have something going on there too.
Mm-hmm.
But I love a physical book.
Computer or pen and paper?
I tried with the pen and paper. Computer, definitely, because I write, and then even within the same sentence, I'm editing and I'm, making it a better sentence. So that's really hard on a notebook.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, English nerd question here. English major nerd question here, I should say. Oxford comma or no Oxford comma?
Always the Oxford comma.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to pry that comma out of my hands. I don't know if my editors take it out. They might, but I always have it in there. So.
Oh, awesome. What is your go-to writing snack?
I love dry cereal, like the cinnamon and the chocolate cereal. Oh, it's terrible. Not so much like the marshmallow sugary cereals, but even like flake cereal or something. It's just a great little like snack.
Oh yeah.
Cheerios?
Any of it.
Yep. If you could pick a favorite book or series, I know this is hard, or a favorite author, can you pick one?
That's really tough. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is like a standby favorite, of course.
Oh, brilliant one.
Oh, so good.
Christy Cambron has written the most beautiful series, several series, but my favorite of hers is the Lost Castle series. Just excellently, beautifully written, and I adore those books. And her as an author too. Everything she writes is beautiful.
Wow.
Oh.
Like you can see the shape of her heart in her books, and she just has this lovely, feminine, God-filled prose. It's just beautiful, beautiful stories.
Wow.
Wow. We'll have to check that out. Huh.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, Joanna, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Postables, do not forget tonight and join the launch party of The Love Note on Facebook. We'll be sure to promote it, and we'll be sure to put a link in the Facebook group and on Twitter. And Joanna, is there any social media that you want to shout out?
My Facebook author page, Joanna Davidson Politano, is where I post the most. My newsletter will have the earliest updates and some more personal things. I'm also on Twitter and on Instagram, and a little bit on Pinterest.
Okay. Well, go ahead and follow you there. And I don't know if I knew about the newsletter. I'll have to sign up.
All right.
Yeah. Go find that and sign up. All right, you guys, we will be back next week to recap one of our favorite movies, Higher Ground.
Just prepare a whole fleet of mops.
Yes, Postables, start sending Jess some mops. I mean,
Yeah.
we're gonna.
To me.
She's gonna need it.
I'll be broke if I buy them all myself.
Maybe send Cammy and I some buckets too, and maybe Kleenex.
Yeah, boxes of Kleenex. That would be nice.
Yeah. Kleenex, do you want to sponsor us?
Yes.
Because we can give you rent for your money.
We can.
Alrighty, guys. We will see you guys next week. And again, make sure you follow Joanna wherever she is found on social media. And as always, you can find us on Twitter, and we will be back. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
See you tonight.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Deliver Me a Podcast. If you want to know what's going to happen next week, be sure you are following us on Twitter at Deliver Me a Pod and on Instagram at Deliver Me a Podcast. We also have a merch store where you can buy tons of Postables things for you and your friends. We'll see you next week.